Okay, let's get ready to rock, shall we? Get this show started. See where we're at. Welcome to One-on-One with Coach Blu. Do a little bit of time checking here just for a moment so that we can get a few people here in the lobby. Record this bad boy to the computer. All right. Let's take a look and see who else is coming on board. Looks like we are live on platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Tried to get TikTok, but that didn't quite work, but we'll get there one of these days. Okay, athletes, so happy to be here with you guys today. Lots of stuff happening in the world and the addiction recovery, and unfortunately the addiction world in and of itself. I want to talk a little bit today about some of the happenings that are going on right now. And, Marissa is busy, so I'm a lone wolf here, going to be shooting from the hip. So there won't be too much interaction unless you jump on the old Facebook page and I can see your comment or your question. But I have a lot of stuff I need to share with you guys today. There's a lot going on in the world, and it seems as though it keeps getting pushed under the front page, further back into the obscurities of media. And just like I think a lot of our recovery topics and resources, they're hard to find. And there is a bunch of stuff happening right now in your world that I really believe you should be aware of. I want to turn your attention to a few Facebook, like social media groups that I really believe are doing some great work getting the information out there, because you may or may not be aware that there is a sinister drug out there right now, and it is mixing with absolutely everything. So the chances of you having significant issues or having a loved one succumb to fentanyl abuse without even their knowledge or know-how, very, very likely. We're going to jump into a few things today. I want to share some stuff with you guys today. We're going to do a multimedia platform. You're going to see Coach Blu here navigate from this page, do some screen sharing. But for those that are listening via podcast, I will do my best to describe what we're reading and what we're seeing so that you can follow along, because there is so much going on. And it seems as though, again, people, no one is listening. It is getting to be beyond a joke how heavy the losses are to prescription and substance use overdose and death. And yet still, as you know, not a lot happening. There is so much going on in your world that I want to turn some time over to a few articles that have really caught my attention. I'm going to share these things with you for the hope that you will join the troops somehow, some way in your community to help start advocating for the silent voices that are suffering. There's so much we have to do. And you know this as well as I do. The troops aren't coming. Your government, they're not coming. They are focused on stupidity and dumb things and calling each other names and all this garbage in DC. Meanwhile, we are losing loved ones. And the rhetoric is so insane that I don't really even think you may really truly understand how difficult this challenge is. We have things from oversight that needs to happen through treatment. We have things like this fentanyl issue that is being, finger pointing to all kinds of obstacles and issues that they think no one can solve. And yet day by day, we continue to lose. As you're losing loved ones, we are seeing huge increases of mental health issues. Specifically, and I've talked about this, and you're starting to see now, the opiate orphans that we've talked about for the past several years, who are now leading themselves into addiction and are now continuing the cycle. And if we don't do something quick, we're going to lose this battle, and we will become a nation full of people that have extreme loss and extreme trauma in their histories. So I want to share with you guys a few things. And as I'm multitasking here, really, the best place to do this, because I'm going to have a couple screens going, is Facebook. If you have a comment, if you have something that you want to get off your chest, please write a comment. I don't have all the answers here. I have a lot of ideas, and I've got a ton of opinions, but those don't really move the needle very much. So there is a social media group on Facebook, supporters of the pharmacist Dan. And this is the documentary that came out about a year ago about a pharmacist in Florida who lost his son to an opiate overdose, and he was the one who started to crack the light and crack some real focus onto this opiate epidemic as it began, as he was a pharmacist seeing people coming into his pharmacy with these astronomical amount of prescriptions for the Sackler family's best product, the instruments of death. He started kind of scratching his head and thinking that this was a little bit odd. After his son passed away, he did a very deep dive into find out what this was by finding doctors that were overprescribing, by finding these very neglectful pain clinics that were just issuing medications and opiates like they were candy. And unbeknownst to him, simultaneously, as the government, local government down there was doing some investigating, they kind of joined forces. But it is heartbreaking to see the stories that are being posted on this, because they are really kind of getting shuffled around. But there's a few here I really want to shed some light on, and these are going to be heartbreaking. But you need to know what this truly is. You need to understand kind of what we're dealing with, what we're battling here. Some of this stuff we're going to be able to listen to some clips. Some of this stuff I'll be reading to you specifically. But I really want to share a few stories here about the significance about what this is. And the uneducated person will hear these and be extremely mad, and you'll be so frustrated and you want to point fingers. We got to be careful with that, you guys, because there's a lot of variables that go into these kind of things. So I'm asking for a little bit of an open heart and an open mind as we're getting into some of these things. But I want to share a few stories with you about what's going on in your world right now. For you guys who are watching, I'm going to click over and get you onto some screen sharing abilities here. Now, fentanyl is an synthetic opiate-based medication that is 100 times stronger than traditional opiates. And so what they're finding is that people are mixing this with so many different kind of substances that it is becoming absolutely ruthless. And it's taking people, and destroying them, obliterating them. This first story is going to come out of, Colorado. Colorado police recover fentanyl from a home where 5 people fatally overdosed on Sunday afternoon. This was just this last Sunday, okay? Now here's the deal. I want you guys to listen to this. I want you guys to I want your thoughts on this. It's gut-wrenching. It is absolutely gut-wrenching. The detectives with the Commerce City Police Department recovered drugs that tested positive for fentanyl in a home where 5 adults suffered a fatal overdose on Sunday afternoon. The 5 victims, 2 men, 3 women, ranged from ages 24 to 32. A 4-month-old baby was found in the home and was doing fine on Monday, according to police. Commerce City Police indicate that the baby's mother was one of the deceased individuals. A 29-year-old woman was also found in the home and transported to a hospital for treatment. Officials believe that the deceased intended to do cocaine and overdosed on fentanyl. No drug is safe now. You guys need to understand that. No drug is safe now. The Commerce City Police Department said Monday that detectives will vigorously pursue charges against the dealers who supplied the drugs. Well, you have 5 dead individuals. I highly doubt they're going to be doing much talking. So great start. I'm glad you guys are trying. The use of fentanyl unintentionally is what caused these individuals to be subjected to overdose associated with the harmful reactions, said the police, right? Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate that is, 100 times more powerful than heroin and commonly laced with heroin, cocaine, and other drugs. Can you imagine the scene of walking in on that on Sunday, hearing the infant, a 4-month-old baby in the background crying, and if no one would have checked, that infant would have had a much more horrible outcome. This was this last Sunday. We can get mad, we can get upset with the families and those people, but what's that going to do? Because this is an addiction issue, right? I think that as you go down, you start hearing these other issues that get even more heart-wrenching. There's another group that's called loved ones who've lost family who's lost a loved one to fentanyl. This is a heart-wrenching, an absolute heart-wrenching sight. In fact, I think you just saw that Addict to Athlete posted one of these stories to our Facebook page. But I want to spend some time focusing on one that I've been following for the last year now. And this is one that really got me up in arms because of the way that it was handled at the very beginning. I actually did a social media post calling out the reporter who was very disrespectful to this individual's family when they were reporting this. And you may not know this because, again, a lot of these things don't quite get put into the frontal view of social media altogether, or even mainstream media. And if you'll recall, last year, there was an individual named Tyler Skaggs, who was a professional pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels, who was found dead on July 1st of 2020. And it was gut-wrenching because there was absolutely issues with substance abuse. But you may not know that his trial just completed last Thursday, and it's gut-wrenching. It's absolutely gut-wrenching. I'm going to post some responses to his teammates here so you guys can see this too. But I'm telling you guys, it's absolutely rough. I'm going to click over here so you guys can see this. I want to share this with you specifically so we can kind of take a little bit of a deep dive onto what this is going to be. So we're looking now at the Yahoo News. This came out last week. You know, here's what the overdose death trial of Major League Baseball pitchers Tyler Skaggs missed about America's opioid crisis. Now, here's the thing. Okay, right now we're talking about this tagline here about the America's opiate crisis. Now, although Tyler was using opiates, that's not what killed him, because they found traces of fentanyl in this medication he was abusing. Now, there's no question that he did have an addiction, and it was missed by a lot of people. In fact, it was actually pushed by another member of the Angels baseball team, as you'll see here in a moment. One by one, the Major League Baseball players came out to witness and to the witness stand. I took opiates, they all said. Now, there are so many professional athletes that are I guess, held captive to opiates. And last Thursday, I was able to be on a panel with several professional athletes, Randy Grimes being one, and we spoke a lot about pain and how it infiltrates athletics. And if it's in professional sports, it's obviously on every street corner. And what they did is during the trial brought up a bunch of his teammates and other players who all bore witness that they took opiates to cover pain. They have to. You have to understand that this is their livelihood, people. And if you listen to the Agents of Recovery podcast with Max Hall, you've understood that that's exactly how his opiate issue began. Is, you know, this is my livelihood. If I can't go out here and play because I'm having some aches and some pains and some severe issues, I'm going to lose my job. Funny how that translates into the same thing that we, as we'll say the non-professional athletes, the common folk, actually have as well. And so here we are, we're bringing professional athletes up, and they're all bearing witness that this is it. For some, it was pain. For others, it was recreational. But for one of their own, Los Angeles pitcher Tyler Skaggs, taking opiates proved to be fatal. He died in 2019 of an overdose after failing, you guys, to recognize this. I am so blown away by this, because there's warning signs. There's things, if a team and if a general management squad really knew their players, they'd see this. But it's a don't ask, don't tell kind of policy, right? And it's sad. And I can't blame them, but it hurts because we're not doing them any favors. Joining 500,000 people in U.S. who similarly have perished because of the opiate epidemic over the last decade. And it shows how the lethal epidemic has swept through the nation into America's iconic sport. On Thursday, this is last Thursday, a jury, this is I think the 19th, right? On Thursday, a jury in federal courthouse in Fort Worth, Texas, found former Angels communication official Eric K., 47, guilty of distributing the counterfeit fentanyl-laced pills that led to Skaggs' death, and of the conspiracy to possess pills with the intent to distribute. K faces a minimum of 20 years to life in prison. So here is a front office staff. The Angels communication official, Eric K., 47 years old, who I guess wanted to build some bridges between the players and himself. And this was what he did. He dealt substances to the players. Laced with fentanyl. So we got a little bit of an issue here with the news as we talk about opiates. Because opiates, although very bad, not fentanyl. And so I want to break down and distinguish the two for you guys. Because fentanyl and opiates combined, that's a guaranteed lethal shot right there. But if we continue to distribute the false narrative that these are just opiates, we're going to fail to recognize that fentanyl is the devil's drug right now. It is killing more people day by day than anything else right now. And you're hearing it, but not a lot of people are doing anything about it. And so when we pitch this false narrative about just being opiates, well, that seizes our hearts because we're familiar with it. But when we start introducing another substance like fentanyl, it's going to get people kind of off the mark a little bit. They're going to say, well, it's always something, and they're going to move on. But I need the significance of what this is it's very different. And although opiates and the Sackler family, they're going to have to pay for their crimes, this life or the afterlife, fentanyl, I believe, played a major cause in the overdose death of Tyler. So players' testimony was incredibly difficult for our organization to hear, as a reminder that too often drug use and addiction are hidden, said Angels president John Capiro in a statement, noting that the league had begun testing players for opiates after Skaggs' death. Well, hey, thank you. Like after the fact, now we're like, yeah, you know what, guys? I got a revolutionary idea. I think we should test people instead of having a relationship with their players, because I don't know this for sure. I've talked to enough professional athletes to know that the relationship between coach, general, GM staff, and players doesn't always seem to be the most fluid of conversation. And what I mean by that is these are money-making individuals, much like you as an employee at your job, right? And it's hard to kind of see the light on a comment like that, because it's like, well, we're doing everything we can now, knowing damn well that it was an issue before, guys. And the reason why it's easy to highlight this is because we have information. Now, this goes on in every job place and every workplace there is. We need to take a much better and a much different approach to this, right? I would wonder what the real camaraderie is in a situation like that, because again, and you can go back and listen, and I'll post the discussion we had with professional athletes last week with Randy and a few others. And the hard part about this is you can't express injury or pain in professional sport. And I would say that reflects right down into the common folk like us, right? It's hard to like admit that there's an issue because of the what ifs. So in Tyler's defense, if he would have really truly gotten himself in a situation where he was pleading and asking for help, how long do you think he would stay as the pitcher of the Angels? Well, not very long. If the feeling is that you go to your supervisor, your boss, your head of department, and you say, look, I'm struggling, I've got some issues here. Rare is the case that there's understanding and that there's willingness to help. I've heard many that have. Trust me, I'm not saying that all companies are like this. I've heard many, many employers that will give the time and the resources and the comfort and the support to get this job done. But in the quick pace industry of Major League Baseball and other sports, there's not a lot of room for grace there. So thank you for testing them after the fact. I appreciate that, but a little too late. We are grateful that the government and the jury for seeing this important case through and get the right verdict, said the Skaggs family. And bless their hearts, man. I mean, talk about a family that's probably going through some turmoil. It's heavy. Listening to his wife's testimony was gut-wrenching. That she trusted the players to be, or that, sorry, the staff to be friends and to be supporters and to want the same things that the public at large wants. And I think although Kay, who was again working as the communications official there, I think his intentions were to be that person, that confidant, that friend, that support to Tyler and other players. Horrible way of doing it. Horrible way. You think that the communications person of the team would be able to communicate better resources and needs, but oh well. Well, the trial provided a solace for Skaggs' family. Medical experts spoke to BuzzFeed News, suggesting that the rigid league language of the courtroom failed to address the realities of addiction and drug use. There, Kay was a drug dealer, according to prosecutors, and Skaggs, and Kay were drug addicts. According to the defense attorneys, in truth, the deadly double play of inadequate treatment for opiate addiction and widespread counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl made Skaggs' death more likely, just as it has for so many others. One important way to understand what happened in the case of this tragic overdose death of a professional athlete is to recognize it as another tragic example. Albeit a very specific, high-profile example of what American society at large has been suffering through for the past 2 decades, said Steven Tyler, medical director of the NBA, NBPA, Players Assistance and Anti-Drug Program. More than 1 million Americans have died of a drug overdose since 1996. Well, good grief, that is bizarre. The year that oxycodone pills were first widely marketed in the US by those great folks, the Sacklers, right? According to the trial testimony and court records, Skaggs died in a Hilton hotel in South Lake, Texas, on an Angels trip to play the Texas Rangers, shortly after crushing the blue pills imprinted with an M30 that looked like genuine M30 milligram Oxycontin pills. Skaggs likely thought or hoped that they were real Oxycontin based on past texts with Kay. Former Angel players Matt Harvey, CJ Cron, Mike Moran, Cameron and Blake Parker testified that they had revealed that they had received pills in the past from Kay. And counterfeit pills can look a lot like ones that killed Skaggs. I mean, the guys, they have these presses, that you can buy and that you can make that make them look very real. And very rare is the fact that you'll sit there and study, the pill, not knowing that it could be laced with fentanyl. Fake pills laced with fentanyl have been linked to deaths in the U.S. And you know this, Prince and Tom Petty, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, warned in September of a sharp increase in their spread of nationwide, worsening the already troubling overdose crisis by reaching people who think the pills are real or who had, maybe shied away from injecting drug use or drug use. With a lack of tolerance to opiates, they've seen more increased drug use. So, both Skaggs and Kay have been using opiate painkillers for years, according to trial testimony. Previous news reports that Skaggs' stepbrother testified that he had tried to help the pitcher himself wean off the painkillers in 2013 after an injury. And then, of course, that didn't quite work, because at that point, too, we got to remember that there's a difference between physical pain and emotional pain. I just released a video talking a little bit about this that you can go look at on YouTube and or Facebook, and you can go check that out. But it crushes, you guys. It's hard, and no one really heard about this. We heard about when he passed away. It was a blip on the radar, and now this a week later, and I wanted to talk about it here a little bit more in detail. But the hard part about this is, well, what do we do, right? What do we do with this? Because this is one very high-profile case that is out there in the public. I do know, because I spoke with several people. If you go back and listen to Sam McDowell's podcast with Addict to Athlete, him and his son, they both work in the industry of helping in Major League Baseball people get to overcome addiction. There are resources there, but how hard is it to access them when you're afraid of losing your livelihood? I was listening to some ESPN clips, and they were talking about this after the fact. And there was one specifically that they were talking about where they noticed that a pitcher's nose was beginning to bleed, and they were wondering why it was bleeding out of nowhere, and then coming out to find out that it was actually because of snorting, pills. They kind of drug them over the coals a little bit. They failed to recognize the magnitude of the epidemic. I don't think anyone's going to just raise their hand and be like, help me. They're going to try and survive to the bitter end and then try and get help. There's got to be a different approach that we attempt. It goes on to say, many of us in the addiction treatment field recognize that to be an alarming high risk situation, regardless of the type of work the person does. Well, no kidding. But again, when you go from absolute, the big leagues, the major leagues, down to nothing in a matter of moments because you're sharing something so personal, there's a lot of fear there. But that fear is exactly the same as somebody who is in mainstream, who is living life to life and day to day in a mindset of, I'm going to lose my family, I'm going to lose my livelihood, I'm going to lose my job. There's no difference at that point. Everyone is the same. Doesn't matter if you're a major league pitcher. Doesn't matter if you're a long haul truck driver. Doesn't matter if you're a computer programmer. Those feelings, those fears are exactly the same. And so it goes on to say we need to have someone to blame. So we blame the dealer without considering many people who sell and have addictions, right? Now, here's the deal. Of course, we get upset with that. We really do. And who's really to be held responsible for these kind of things, right? Traditional punishments don't seem to be working, because if they did, we'd have a lot less issues with this. So where do we drill down? Where do we begin with this? Okay. It's interesting to me to see the concepts of opiates and this lethal substance of fentanyl becoming so widely used to cope with pain. I've said this a million times. I'm a firm believer that we all use substances to cover something that hurts, to suppress some kind of pain, something that's uncomfortable. Most people, majority of people, use because of traumatic histories. There's been something in there that hurts. That's a hard one to comprehend, because if opiates solve physical pain, you bet it's going to solve the emotional pain. And when we get those two lines blurred about what physically hurts but what emotionally hurts, even if it's an anticipatory future pain of like losing my job or losing my livelihood, that's still going to cause some fear, some anxiety, which is going to manifest in pain. Pain that I'm not living up to my own expectations, pain that I'm hurting my family, pain that I'm, hurting my teammates, pain that I'm hurting my employer, whatever it is. I think we need to rebrand and relook at how we cope with pain. Pain's one of the worst things ever, man. You ever had a toothache? And look no further than Tom Hanks in Castaway, right? Like the toothache, it hurts that bad that he's willing to knock it out with an ice skate. That's intense. But pain also was a motivator to stay stuck in addiction too. I remember speaking with dentists and having people come in and start root canals and never having them finish, so that can always be a mechanism of obtaining more pain pills and go shopping from dentist to dentist. That's not normal. But pain is one of the most, I think, misunderstood, kind of, questioned, is it really pain issue that we have? Because how can anyone debate pain? That's one of the biggest issues that doctors have had, right? Sackler family brings up this, you treat the pain and then the patient. Well, it's a great concept, but pain is an indicator that something's wrong. And so if we just continue to suppress it with pain medication, that something wrong will never be discovered. And so if we continually push and push and push and push and don't go to the source of the cause, what happens? And I think we as people in recovery, or we as people in society, need to do better about understanding, how to cope with it, how to understand it. Because there's also people out there that have legitimate chronic pain that now are looked at as, addicts. Not appropriate. It finishes off by saying, who benefits from this band of judgment or justice? Sorry. It's not like some criminals mastermind with distribution networks throughout Los Angeles were removed from the streets and forever it will remain safe, right? Everybody's life is a little worse with this kind of approach. And it's talking about that heavy hand of like, the 30 to 50 years to life in prison, all these kind of things. Now it sucks. It hurts. And my heart goes out to everyone involved because it's a tragic case, but this is a tragic case that happens well over 400 times every day now. That is mind-boggling. And with fentanyl, you guys, it is absolutely crushing our life. It's consuming. We go down back over here to the page of the supporters of the pharmacist Dan, and we start looking at some of these other topics and whatnot. We look at so many issues. This one here on CNN: middle school children fall prey to fatal fentanyl overdose. Dr. Phil, even he's on it, so it's a big deal. And then we get these kind of things. Sackler family offered another $1.6 billion for Purdue through Chapter 11 settlement. These guys need to be completely stripped of any financial aspects of this, but they also all need to be behind bars. And your government has failed you miserably. If you haven't watched Dope Sick or read the book Dope Sick, I highly recommend it, because you'll see what power and money does with corruption. I mean, these people legitimately should all be behind bars, but money speaks and it can buy pretty much anything. Teen charged with murder after 12-year-old California girl dies from fentanyl overdose. Teen charged with murder after 12-year-old California girl dies from fentanyl overdose. Holy cow. Fentanyl, stop fentanyl silence, stop fentanyl genocide, stop 300 deaths a day, stop 1.2 million more deaths by 2029, stop the 465 deaths a day by 2029. That's what happens if we don't get a grip on this. We continue down, right? Here's another one, these stories, they just don't stop. They just keep coming and coming. And it's almost hard to wrap your head around how much is out there. Father launches One Pill Kills social media effort campaign after son's fatal overdose, right? The guys, it just keeps coming and it just keeps coming. There are no great stories attached to this, right? Well, it's coming from China. There's another one. Unlikely Alliance continues to explore southern border. These cartels from China and Mexico, exploiting the weak border, the bringing things through. Pretty rough. And I'm telling you, it's hard, because if we don't do something, this is going to become so commonplace that we're going to just give up. And we're going to have it is what it is mentality. Well, it is what it is. That's the stupidest thing you can ever say about a situation, and a situation like this to boot. If you use the statement, it is what it is, you're a fool, because it can always be so much worse, or it can always be so much better. If you're an is what it is person, you're anchored, you're done, you're stuck. And there's too many of the it is what it is people that are looking at this and thinking, it is what it is. I guess we're just stuck. I guess there's nothing we can do. That mentality is the stupidest, most victimizing mentality I've ever faced, I've ever heard. Whenever someone says that to me, I just kind of roll my eyes and I think, then get out of the way. Get out of the way, because your is what it is mentality is making things worse, because your lack of care, your lack of interest, your anchor that you're planting right there, you're going to bog up the road, because we will do it. The troops aren't coming. We're the troops. So if you're an is what it is person, get the hell out of the way. We have too many it is what it is mentalities trying to focus on this. The border, it is what it is. Fentanyl, it is what it is. Opiates, they are what they are. It's the dumbest thing when you think about it, right? There's this thing on TikTok and this guy gets really deep. It's like, if you know a person that uses, it is what it is. Watch out for that person, because that person, I'm like, don't try and like inflate this to be something like cool or like hip. It's stupid, because it can always be better or it can always be worse. If we take an is what it is mentality, that's all it will be, and we'll lose. So get out of the way. This is a hard topic to discuss because there's a lot of feelings and emotions, and I don't have the answers, but I do believe that when great minds can combine and understanding can proceed, and we can get out of each other's way and we can stop turf guarding, can you imagine what we could accomplish? Because my mission is to help people overcome the pain. And 9 times out of 10, that pain is emotional or mental. There's a lot of physical pain. But it's interesting, the people that I've met that have intense chronic pain very rarely talk about it. That's kind of a hard thing. In fact, I've met people that I would never have guessed that they are in extreme pain every day. And I ask them, how do you do it? And they don't really have an answer. They just say, I just do. I just do. I look for solace in days that are lighter than others. And I do certain things to help me. Medication is a tool, not a result or a destination. But what I've also found is that when we have legitimate pain and we become hooked on opiates, our minds create that pain to be far more serious than it truly is. And the fear of experiencing pain is what keeps us stuck on the medication. Think about that for a minute. A lot of times I've worked with people that have had significant back issues and problems because they've worked as laborers and, throwing shingles on a roof for 20 years, and they've hurt their backs. And they've been using opiates for so long, they've forgotten what that pain truly feels like. And when they start to wean themselves off, the fear of the pain creates emotional pain in and of itself. And by the time they've weaned themselves down, they realize that it's manageable, it's tolerable. Now, there's a lot of medications out there, obviously. One of the big ones that we're told about several years ago, gabapentin, was a miracle drug, right? Can't be abused, they said. Can't be abused. The program I worked at was handing it out left and right, giving people 30, 60 days of this. And I'm like, that can't be good. Oh, don't worry, cannot be abused. And then my clients would come in like, oh, you'll never guess what happened. My roommate stole all my medication. What? No. Yeah, they did, I promise. Well, so the doctor gives him another, 60-day supply. You wouldn't believe a week later, he did it again. I cannot believe that they stole it again. Warning signs. Nope, can't be abused. It is so funny to hear that kind of stuff and then dig deep into the Sackler issue with OxyContin and see how much we're lied to. It is crazy. It's crazy. To each his own. We have to be very cautious. We have to educate ourselves. That's why I'm challenging all you listeners out there to do a deep dive on this fentanyl issue. You've got to be talking to your kids about it. It's everywhere. Here in Southern Utah today, right? A message came through from Coach Winters from Delta High. He messaged Max, Brock, and I. And let me pull this up and I'll share it with you guys. Just today, as we were talking about this with him when we were down there in Delta. We were talking to them. We're telling them about fentanyl. He's like, no, I hadn't really heard about that. So this is February 23rd. Today, 3 men arrested after 8.5 pounds of fentanyl pills were found during a traffic stop in Cedar City, Utah. Today. But it's going to be a blip on our radar. 8.5 pounds, that is a lot of pills, you guys. A ton. Where do you think they're going? They're not just going to end up somewhere in a big city somewhere. They're going to end up in your home. You have got to start telling your children, you've got to stop screaming it from the lungs. You've got to start demanding some change, because If 8.5 pounds were confiscated in Cedar City, Utah today, as of February 23rd, 2022, they're going to be here tomorrow, February 24th. This is some scary stuff. And it's to the armchair cowboy who just kind of sits there and huffs and puffs. And it's like, well, not in my household. You're fooling yourself. It's everywhere. And with the way that it's being, I guess mixed with all kinds of stuff, even marijuana, even legalized THC in some states, it's going to have it in it. Well, you wonder why. Why in the world would we kill the people that are using the supply? Because I know you're probably thinking that. Why would we do that? It's interesting. You know what's interesting? The interesting part about this is when these 5 people that passed away over the weekend and left that 4-month-old infant alone, when they died, guess what happened to the surrounding areas? Guess who came out of the woodwork to find the really good stuff? You bet. When people hear this, it brings them in droves because that must be some good stuff. So they think they can tempt fate. They think, well, if it's that good, I can just use a little bit. Maybe those guys pushed it too hard. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they were, like taking more than they should, but I'm smarter than that. I can handle my own. It's crazy stuff. Yeah. It's the craziest thing. When we see these kind of deaths and whatnot, we see an increase of people coming out to purchase it. It's crazy. So some of the other mentality will be like, well, good, let them kill them all. Let them all die. Let all the addicts die. You better be very careful with that because a majority of these people that die from these kind of overdoses, they're not full-blown addicts yet. Not even close. Not even close. So we have some things to counteract this, right? We've got Narcan and things of that nature, but if you're using fentanyl, it takes a lot more. And sometimes people have 1, maybe 2 doses, and sometimes it may need 2, 3, or 4. Guys, it's happening at an alarming rate. And it's very much in the news. I need you to be very in tune with this. And sorry to get up on a soapbox today, but it's crucial that we understand the premise and the issues around pain management, being able to recognize the signs of abuse in our families, be able to have open conversations with your family. The only way this is going to change, the only way we're going to overcome any of this is if you listening to this in your home, educate, build relationships with, and develop an understanding between you and your family members. That is the only way we're going to overcome this. We will not be able to do it through the public schools. We will not be able to do it through the medical community. We will not be able to do it in the treatment residential industry. We will not do it through the government. It has to happen in your home. So if you're a do as I say, not as I do person, and you're slamming beers and you're drinking alcohol and you're smoking weed and you're hoping your kids don't do it, good luck. Good luck. Because that won't work. Do as I say, not as I do mentality will not work. Well, I'm a social drinker. I'm a recreational drug user, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, prepare for your kids to be that too. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it's going to be. Oh, I can do mine with safety and I can, my kids, yeah. I've heard it all before. There is no easy solution to this. And all of you listening to this at one point, many of you listening to this, I should say, believe that it's not going to happen to you. That's always somebody else. And you believe that until you get the knock on your door with the officer standing there and saying, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we found your son, we found your daughter. Or you open up that door and you see him. Guys, there's no silver bullet for this at all. I'm a mental health therapist, addictions counselor. My wife is a recreational therapist. We have 4 kids, and I would be kidding myself if I told you that I don't worry that they might fall into something. My 4 kids, they've seen what we've done. They've known athletes that have passed away, but even I still worry about them. None of us are impermeable to this. None of us are free from these effects. So if you truly want to change this, you have to do it in your home, which means you have to share this kind of stuff. You have to have the ability to get really offended by this stuff. And I'm talking like it needs to offend you. It makes me so mad. And I want to do tons more to help, to advocate, to strengthen, to embrace. But really, it's going to fall on deaf ears if I can't do it first in my own home. That's a heavy topic. And there's going to be more of this. I would highly recommend jumping on the supporters of the Pharmacist Dan, getting on there, being educated to this kind of stuff. It's hard, it's heavy, but the troops aren't coming. You're the troops. And if you want to change this, you got to start with your own home. And I would say if you want to do this, you got to probably start like on your own. It starts with you, the person listening to this. Be cautious, be aware, be understanding. If you're an is what it is person, get out of the way. In fact, jump off the page. I don't want you here. I don't want anyone with an is what it is mentality here. I need you guys to leave. And I'm sorry, but I can't have you here. I need people that are going to advocate. They're going to strengthen their families. They're going to build strong home teams. They're going to be able to be, forces in their own communities to help establish and maintain understanding, to help those in need. And if you're an is what it is, I want you. I don't want you here. I need you gone. I'm sorry if that's offensive, but oh well. That's how I see it. So, okay. It's heavy. It's hard. But there's a lot that can be done. It all starts with you in your home. Building your home court advantage is crucial. We'll jump into that topic more later. I want to thank you all for hanging in there on this little soapbox. Please share this with anybody that you feel might need it. I want to thank Radio Rona and the Radio Rona Network for all that you do. And athletes, until next time, please, please, please turn the mess into a message.